hear about Thomas the Tank Engine is the 30th book of the Railway series, and was first published in 1986. It was written by Christopher Awdry, the son of the series creator, and illustrated by Clive Spong. On the same year it was released, 3 of its 4 short stories were adapted into 3 short episodes of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends. The author has stated that he is dissatisfied with the book for 2 reasons. 1, its unimaginative title, and 2, the stories themselves, as he had to rush them to meet a deadline caused by the producers of the TV series, Britt Allcroft and David Mitton. At the time, they were under a contract that stated they could only adapt the Railway series stories that had been written by either the Reverend Awdry or his son. It may seem odd that they were so reliant on Christopher writing a new book, as even not counting stories that featured characters they did not have the budget to bring to model life, i.e. the Skarloey and Mountain engines, there were at least 15 stories they had chosen not to adapt during Series 1. There had even been another 3 recent books already written by Christopher. However, none of these neglected stories featured Thomas the Tank Engine as a main character, and that is what the television show's creators wanted. Furthermore, they told Christopher to make sure the stories featured the 3 non-rail vehicles, Bertie, Harold, and Terence, since these characters had only appeared a couple of times in the stories written by Wilbert Awdry. By the time Series 3 of Thomas and Friends went into production, the deal had changed, or had expired, as half of the episodes in that series were written by Allcroft and Mitton. To say they were as unsatisfied as the author was would not be too big of a lie, as they originally planned to only use 2 of his 4 fresh stories. Anyway, how faithful were these adaptations? Let's see if we can spot the differences. The book's first story became the first episode of Thomas and Friends' 2nd season. Thomas is boasting to Percy and Toby about how splendid it is to be painted blue. Naturally, Percy and Toby do not agree with this theory, which annoys the egotistical Thomas. In the episode, this scene takes place at Elsbridge Station, but in the illustration, the engines are at and in their sheds at Farquhar. Also, in the book, Percy winks at Toby, but in the episode, he just grins. The memorable accident that leaves Thomas buried in coal happens very differently in the book. Thomas is resting at a junction when Percy passes him, pulling trucks full of coal. One of the trucks breaks open just as it is next to the tank engine, causing a pile of coal to pour out, covering him in its black dust. In the episode, Thomas's resting place is by a coal hopper, which Percy is using to fill up his trucks. The small green engine moves too far back, crashing through some buffers, and the coal, with no trucks to fill, pours out next to Thomas, continuously. The adaptation difference is quite understandable. It makes for a much more iconic image than just a small pile of coal at Thomas's wheels, making it perhaps less believable that it could amount to enough dirty dust to completely shower the engine. With that said, in my opinion, David Mitton went far too overboard by allowing the coal from the hopper to build up like a mini mountain. And is the hopper supposed to have a mind of its own, or is the person operating it a blind fool? Percy only had 1 truck left that needed filling, so why did the coal keep coming? Also, the trucks telling Percy to "Go on, go on, go on" does not happen in the book. In the book only, the cleaners criticise Thomas for being so filthy, and when Toby collects Annie and Clarabelle, he has Henrietta with him too. Thomas is annoyed with Percy for laughing at his misfortune, and thus making Percy annoyed with Thomas. Despite the narration stating that this scene takes place during the night, an illustration error shows it to be daylight. Thomas has a couple of lines of dialogue on this page, but they were not included into the episode.
"You wait, Percy," replied Thomas crossly. "One day you'll laugh on the other side of your smoke box."
The next day, Thomas watches from the station as Percy reverses into the same siding the blue tank engine had his accident in. Percy finds he cannot stop, crashes through the broken buffers, and into a coal bunker. Once again, this accident happens quite differently in the episode. Percy is travelling forwards towards the water column, pulling a train of trucks with him. He breaks the broken buffers and ends up in a ditch full of coal. The narrator refers to the unsafe buffers as if they are the same ones Percy crashed into next to the coal hopper. But they are in an absolutely different location. The story ends with the two friends forgiving each other. In the book, however, their feud is not resolved, and won't be until the final story.
Blue is the only colour for a really useful engine. Everybody knows that.
Thomas?
The Runaway is the second story of the book, and was the 10th episode of Season 2. Thomas is feeling ill, and is taken away to be mended. The illustration shows Edward pulling the tank engine to the works, but in the episode he is perched on top of a flatbed truck. Sir Topham Hatt gives Duck the job of covering for Thomas's absence by running his branch line. In the book, the Fat Controller mentions that Donald and Douglas will take over Duck's normal duties. This line was not included in the episode, as the Scottish twins would not be introduced until episode 16. Duck meeting Terence the Tractor outside a cottage does not happen in the book, and Annie and Clarabelle telling the Great Western Engine about the events of Thomas and the Guard does not happen in the episode. Thomas returns from the works feeling better, but functioning less efficiently, as extra pressure needs to be applied to his handbrake in order for it to actually bring him to a stop and prevent him from starting up again. The fact that Thomas and Percy are still cross with each other due to the events of the previous story is brought up here, but not in the episode, as they did forgive each other. The next scene takes place at Knapford Junction Station. In the episode, the station used is Elsbridge. It seems the man filling in for Thomas's sick fireman was not given Sodor's blue workman uniform to wear, as while it is not mentioned in the narration, the illustration shows him to be dressed in a suit and bowler hat. Due to his faulty handbrake, Thomas starts to move out of the station, leaving his crew and passengers behind. An inspector uses Harold the helicopter to beat the tank engine to the next station. In the book it is said he chases Thomas along the platform before jumping into his cab, but in the episode the inspector is already at the end of the platform, waiting for Thomas to pass him. Also in the adaptation, the sequence happens at Sudrian Station, which, unlike the station shown in the illustration, only has one platform and one track. The last line in the episode is Thomas agreeing with the inspector's wish that nothing like this will ever happen again. He does not say this in the book, and so Thomas is just agreeing with the inspector's loud sigh of relief.
Stop! Stop!
The empty coaches shrieked as they rounded the curve, but Thomas, with plenty of steam, kept on going.
Better Late Than Never was produced as the 15th episode of Season 2. The viaduct that connects the main line to Thomas's branch is under repair, causing the engines and their trains to be delayed as they have to reduce their speed while crossing it. The illustration shows Gordon crossing the viaduct. He is replaced in the episode by Edward, Henry, and Edward again. Thomas moans to Henry about the delays. The two differences to this scene are once again through the illustrations, as the two engines are on the opposite side of the tracks, and instead of both looking cross with each other, Thomas is smirking, and Henry seems surprised by the tank engine's impatientness. When Bertie teases Thomas about being late, the narration says that the little blue engine's face turned blue with rage. In the episode, his face is notably redder. However, this was also due to him being either out of breath or embarrassed for being late. When one day James arrives very late, he and Thomas are facing the same direction. But in Clive Spong's illustration, they are the opposite way round. A mistake here in the episode is that James arrives with a train of vans, not passengers. It could be that Thomas had to wait for James to clear the line, otherwise the two engines would have collided. This is a possible theory, as even in the book there is no mention of the passengers leaving James's coaches and entering Annie and Clarabelle. But this theory does not hold up at all in the adaptation, as James came from behind Thomas, so wasn't blocking the route ahead. Bertie has broken down next to a level crossing and signal box. In the book, the small bus has stopped between a small bridge and a tunnel. Also, Bertie's smoking radiator was added to the adaptation, as it is not mentioned in the book. The passengers are not shown in the illustrations, so they must have chosen to stay inside the broken down bus. The final scene takes place at Farquhar Sheds instead of Tidmouth Station. In the book, Thomas says that he has learned being late isn't necessarily a bad thing, and here the story finishes. In the episode, Thomas says with a hint of humour that sometimes being late can prove to be a positive thing. Then the two friends part ways.
If we hurried across the viaduct, it might collapse, and then you'd have no passengers at all. What would you do then, eh? Run my trains on time for one thing,
retorted Thomas.
The lost story of the book that was never adapted for television is called Drip Tank. Thomas and Percy still haven't forgiven each other over the coal incident, and one night in the sheds, our hero insults the green caterpillar with red stripes by calling him a drip. The next day, he gets a very fitting comeuppance as his side rod punctures his water tank. This story concludes the book by having an embarrassed Thomas apologise to Percy, thus bringing an end to their quarrel.
What's a drip, do you know?